Clara Jane Mitchell fell to her knees in the dust, her cracked lips barely able to form the words. "Please, mister, I haven't had water in 2 days. I'll give you anything." The cowboy by the campfire didn't move. He just watched her with those cold gray eyes. Then he said something that would haunt her forever. What happened next would change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Welcome to Wild West Awesome Tales, where the frontier carries stories of courage and unforgettable love. Subscribe now and follow this journey to the end. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far our story travels. Clara Jane Mitchell had been walking since dawn. Her boots had worn through at the soles 3 days ago. Every step now felt like walking on hot coals. The Texas sun hung overhead like a punishment from God himself, and she had stopped sweating sometime yesterday afternoon. That was a bad sign. She knew enough about the desert to understand that. Her canteen had run dry at Coyote Ridge. Her horse had collapsed a mile past that, and she had knelt beside the animal as it took its last breath, stroking its mane and whispering apologies. She didn't have the strength to speak aloud. Now there was nothing left but the walking. 1 foot, then the other, then again. Thomas would have known what to do. Thomas always knew what to do in situations like this. But Thomas was 6 feet under the Texas dirt, buried beside the cottonwood tree, behind what used to be their ranch, and he wasn't coming to save her this time. Nobody was coming to save her. Clara stumbled and caught herself against a rock that burned her palm. She didn't feel it. She didn't feel much of anything anymore, except the terrible thirst that had become her whole world. Water. She needed water. She would die without it. That thought should have frightened her, but fear required energy she no longer possessed. Instead, she felt something closer to resignation. Maybe this was how it was supposed to end. Maybe the desert was simply finishing what Silas Blackwood had started 6 months ago. At least she would see Thomas again. Clara took another step, then another, her vision blurring at the edges. The horizon wavered like a mirage, and she wondered if she was already hallucinating. They said that happened before the end. They said the mind showed you things that weren't there, gave you hope just before it took everything away. So when she saw the thin line of smoke rising against the darkening sky, she didn't believe it. When she smelled wood smoke and heard the distant whinny of a horse, she still didn't believe it. But her legs believed it. Her legs carried her forward without her permission, stumbling over rocks and through scrub brush, following that smoke like a moth drawn to flame. And then she saw him. A man sat beside a small fire near a cluster of rocks where water seeped from the ground into a natural pool. He had his back against his saddle and his hat tipped low, and he was watching her approach with the kind of stillness that belonged to predators and men who had seen too much. Clara's legs gave out 20 feet from his fire. She fell hard, her knees hitting the packed earth, her hands bracing against the ground. Dust rose around her. She could smell the water, now could hear it trickling somewhere nearby, and the sound was the most beautiful and terrible thing she had ever heard. "Please." Her voice came out as a croak barely human. "Please, mister. I haven't had water in 2 days." The cowboy didn't move. Clara forced herself to look up at him. He was maybe 40, maybe older. Hard to tell with men like this. The desert aged them in strange ways. He had dark hair going gray at the temples, and eyes the color of storm clouds, and there was a scar on his chin that caught the firelight. "I'll give you anything," she heard herself say. "Whatever you want. Just please." Water. Still he didn't move. Still he watched her with those gray eyes that gave nothing away. Something broke inside Clara then. Some last wall of pride that had kept her moving all these miles. She felt tears slip down her cheeks, though she would have sworn she had no moisture left for crying. "Please?" she whispered. "I'm begging you." The cowboy rose slowly. Clara flinched, expecting anything. Violence. Cruelty. The frontier had taught her to expect the worst from strangers. The frontier had taught her that kindness was a currency most men couldn't afford. But the cowboy simply walked to his saddlebag, pulled out a canteen, and knelt beside her. "Small sips," he said. His voice was low and rough like stones grinding together. You drink too fast, you'll bring it all back up. He pressed the canteen to her lips. Clara drank. She wanted to gulp, to pour the whole thing down her throat, but his hand was firm on the canteen, controlling how much she took. Small sips, then a pause, then small sips again. That's it, he said quietly. Easy now. The water was the sweetest thing she had ever tasted. She felt it spreading through her, bringing her back to life, one cell at a time. More, she gasped. In a minute. Let that settle first. Clara closed her eyes. The tears were still coming, and she couldn't seem to stop them. Thank you. Thank you. The cowboy said nothing. He simply waited beside her patient, as the rocks around them, until her breathing steadied and the worst of the shaking stopped. Can you stand? He asked. I think so. He helped her up one hand under her elbow and guided her closer to the fire. He settled her on a flat rock near the warmth and pressed the canteen into her hands again. Slow, he reminded her. Clara nodded and took another careful sip. Her head was starting to clear. The world was coming back into focus around her. The fire, the horse grazing nearby the waterhole with its precious trickle of life-giving moisture, and the man standing over her with his thumbs hooked in his belt, studying her like she was a puzzle he wasn't sure he wanted to solve. You walked here, he said. It wasn't a question. My horse died at Coyote Ridge. That's 15 miles. Felt like 50. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Respect, maybe. Or just surprise that she was still alive. You got a name? He asked. Clara. Clara Jane Mitchell. He nodded once. Sam Thornton. Mr. Thornton, Just Sam. Clara took another sip of water, using the moment to gather herself. Her hands had stopped shaking. That was good. She needed to think clearly now. She needed to figure out her next move. Where you headed, Clara Jane Mitchell? The question hung between them. Clara stared into the fire, watching the flames dance against the darkness. Where was she headed? She had left her ranch 6 months ago with nothing but grief and rage, and a name burned into her memory. She had been following rumors and whispers ever since chasing a ghost across the frontier. Anywhere the men who killed my husband can't find me, she said finally. Sam Thornton went very still. Men who killed your husband, he repeated. 6 months ago. They rode onto our ranch looking for money we didn't have. When Thomas tried to reason with them, Clara's voice caught. She forced herself to continue. They shot him down in front of me. Then they burned our barn and took our horses and rode off like it was just another day's work. Sam said nothing, but Clara noticed his jaw tighten. The sheriff promised he'd track them, she continued. Said he'd bring them to justice, but weeks went by and nothing happened. He said there were too many gangs in the territory. Said he couldn't spare the men. She laughed bitterly. Said maybe I should just move on. Start over somewhere else, like Thomas was just a chapter I could close and forget. You know who they were. Sam's voice was carefully neutral. Too carefully. Clara looked up at him. I know exactly who they were. 5 men in black dusters with red bandanas over their faces. And their leader. She paused, remembering. Their leader had a scar running from his left eye down to his jaw, like someone had tried to cut his face open once. Sam turned away from her, but not before she saw something flash across his features. Recognition, and something darker underneath. Silas Blackwood, he said quietly. Clara's heart stopped. You know that name. I know it. How do you know it? Sam walked to the edge of the firelight and stood there with his back to her, staring out into the darkness. For a long moment, he didn't answer. The fire crackled between them. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. 3 years ago, Sam said finally, I was a Texas Ranger. Clara straightened. A ranger. Badge and everything. Rode with a company out of Austin. We were supposed to keep the peace in the territories, protect the settlers, Bring outlaws to justice." He laughed, but there was no humor in it. That was the idea anyway. What happened? Sam turned to face her. The firelight carved deep shadows into his features. Silas Blackwood happened. He walked back to the fire and sat down across from her, pulling out a pouch of tobacco and rolling a cigarette with practiced fingers. "We'd been tracking his gang for months," Sam continued. "The Blackwood Riders, they called themselves. They had a pattern: hit a ranch, kill anyone who resisted, burn what they couldn't steal. Always moving, never staying in one place long enough to catch." He lit the cigarette and took a long drag. "Then we got a tip. Reliable source said Blackwood was holed up at an abandoned mission near the Rio Grande. We rode out that night. 8 rangers. Thought we were going to end it. But you didn't." Sam shook his head. "It was a trap. Blackwood knew we were coming. Had his men waiting in the hills with rifles. They cut us down before we could even draw our weapons." His voice hardened. "I was the only one who made it out. And before I rode off, I put a bullet in Blackwood's face. Thought I killed him. Turns out, I just gave him that scar." Clara stared at him. "You're the one who scarred him." "I am." "Then he must hate you." "He does. And the feeling is mutual." Clara set down the canteen. Her mind was racing now, pieces falling into place. A former ranger. A personal vendetta against Blackwood. A man who knew how to track outlaws across the frontier. "You're still hunting him," she said. It wasn't a question. Sam met her eyes. "I am." "Why? You're not a ranger anymore. It's not your job." "Some things aren't about the job." Sam tapped ash from his cigarette into the fire. 7 good men died that night at the mission. They had wives, children, families who never got justice. And Blackwood is still out there, still burning ranches and killing folks like your husband. He paused. "Someone has to stop him. Might as well be me." Clara was quiet for a long moment. The fire popped and settled. The horse shifted in the darkness nearby. "Take me with you," she said. Sam's expression didn't change. "No." "I'm serious." "So am I." "No." "Why not?" "Because hunting a man like Blackwood isn't a journey for someone carrying fresh grief. It's dangerous. It's dirty. And there's a good chance it ends with both of us in shallow graves." Clara leaned forward. "Mr. Thornton." "Sam. Sam, listen to me." She held his gaze, refusing to look away. "I buried my husband with my own hands. I dug his grave in ground so hard it took me 2 days. I wrapped him in our wedding quilt because I couldn't afford a coffin. And then I watched our neighbors buy our ranch for pennies because everyone knew I couldn't work it alone." Her voice grew stronger. "I've been walking this territory for 6 months, following every rumor, every whisper about Blackwood and his riders. I've slept in barns and ditches and under open sky. I've gone hungry more times than I can count. And I didn't do all that just to give up now." Sam studied her with those unreadable gray eyes. "What exactly are you looking for?" he asked. "Revenge." Clara considered the question carefully. "I thought I was at first. I wanted to watch Blackwood die. I wanted to be the one holding the gun." She shook her head slowly. "But that's not it anymore. Revenge won't bring Thomas back. Nothing will." "Then what?" "Justice." The word came out firm and clear. "I want to see Blackwood answer for what he's done. Not just to Thomas, but to all the others. I want him standing in front of a judge explaining himself. I want him to know that someone finally held him accountable." Sam was quiet for a long time. "You really believe in justice?" he asked finally. "Out here, I have to believe in something. Most folks believe in survival. Most folks haven't lost what I've lost." Sam finished his cigarette and flicked the butt into the fire. He stood up, stretched, and walked to his saddlebag again. This time, he pulled out a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "Dried beef," he said, handing it to her. Eat it slow. Your stomach won't be ready for much. Clara took the food gratefully. Thank you. Sam sat down again, this time closer to her. His voice dropped low. I'm headed to a town called Willow Creek, about a day's ride north. There's a preacher there named Nathaniel Cole. He's a friend of mine. He hears things who's moving through the territory where the gangs are riding. If anyone knows where Blackwood is hiding, it's him. Clara's pulse quickened. Blackwood is nearby. Maybe. Word is the Blackwood riders were spotted last week near the Red River. If that's true, they could be in this part of Texas by now. Then let me come with you, please. Sam shook his head. I'll take you to Willow Creek, get you set up somewhere safe, then I'll ride on alone. No. Clara. No. She stood up, ignoring the dizziness that swept over her. I didn't walk 15 miles through the desert just to be left behind in some small town while you ride off to do what I should be doing myself. What you should be doing is staying alive. What I should be doing is honoring my husband's memory. Clara stepped closer to him. Thomas was a good man, Sam. A gentle man. He never hurt anyone in his life, and those men shot him down like a dog because he wouldn't let them take what wasn't theirs. Her voice cracked, but she pushed through it. For 6 months I felt like I was already dead, just a body walking around going through the motions. But tonight, sitting here by this fire talking to you. She paused. Tonight is the first time I've felt alive since they put him in the ground. And I'm not going to let that feeling go. Not for you, not for anyone. Sam stared at her. The fire crackled between them. Finally, he spoke. You remind me of someone. Clara blinked. Who? My wife. Sam's voice softened slightly. Sarah. She had that same stubborn streak. Couldn't tell her nothing once she made up her mind about something. Where is she now? Buried outside Austin. Fever took her 5 years ago. Clara felt something shift between them. Two people bound by loss, meeting by chance, in the vast emptiness of the frontier. I'm sorry, she said quietly. So am I. Sam looked into the fire. Every day. Silence settled over them, but it was a different kind of silence now. Softer, less guarded. One condition, Sam said finally. Clara held her breath. Name it. You do what I say when I say it. No arguments. No running off on your own. Blackwood and his men are killers, Clara. They won't hesitate to put a bullet in you if they get the chance. I understand. I mean it. This isn't a game. This isn't some dime novel where the hero always wins. Out here, good people die all the time. I've seen it happen more times than I care to remember. I know. Clara met his eyes steadily. I've seen it too. Sam held her gaze for a long moment. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it. All right then, he said. We leave at first light. Get some sleep. You're going to need it. Clara nodded, relief flooding through her. Thank you, Sam. Don't thank me yet. He stood and walked to his horse, pulling down a worn saddle blanket. Thank me when we're both still breathing and Blackwood is in chains. He tossed her the blanket. It ain't much, but it'll keep the chill off. Clara caught it, surprised. What about you? I've slept on harder ground than this. Sam settled back against his saddle and tipped his hat over his eyes. Get some rest, Clara Jane Mitchell. Tomorrow we ride. Clara wrapped the blanket around herself and lay down near the fire. The ground was hard beneath her, but after 15 miles of walking through the desert, it felt like the finest bed she had ever known. She stared up at the stars scattered across the Texas sky, thinking about Thomas. About Sam. About the long road ahead. For the first time in 6 months, she wasn't alone. And somewhere out there in the darkness, riding beneath those same stars, a man named Silas Blackwood had no idea that fate was slowly closing in. The fire burned low through the night. Clara fell asleep to the sound of crackling embers and the distant call of coyotes dreaming of justice for the first time since her husband's death. And beside her, Sam Thornton lay awake long into the darkness, watching the horizon and wondering if he had just made the best decision of his life or the worst. Either way, there was no turning back now. The hunt had begun. They rode out before the sun cleared the horizon. Sam had given Clara, his spare horse, a chestnut mare with a calm temperament and steady gait. She wasn't much to look at, but she moved well over rough ground, and right now that was all that mattered. Clara gripped the reins tighter than necessary, her muscles still aching from yesterday's walk. But she didn't complain. She had promised to follow Sam's lead, and she intended to keep that promise. For the first hour, neither of them spoke. The silence suited Clara fine. It gave her time to think, to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Yesterday morning she had been alone and dying of thirst. Now she was riding toward a town called Willow Creek with a former Texas Ranger who had his own reasons for hunting Silas Blackwood. Strange how fate worked sometimes. "You ride well," Sam said suddenly. Clara glanced over at him. "My husband taught me. Said a woman on the frontier needed to know how to handle a horse as well as any man." "Smart man." "He was." Clara's throat tightened. "Smartest man I ever knew." Sam nodded, but didn't push further. He seemed to understand that some wounds needed space to breathe. They rode on. Around mid-morning, Sam held up his hand and pulled his horse to a stop. Clara drew up beside him, her heart suddenly racing. "What is it?" Sam pointed toward the ground ahead of them. "Tracks, fresh ones." Clara looked but saw nothing but dust and scrub. "I don't see anything." "3 horses, maybe 4. Sam dismounted and crouched low, studying marks in the earth that were invisible to Clara's untrained eyes. "They came through here a few hours ago, heading northwest." "Blackwood." "Can't say for certain." Sam stood and scanned the horizon. Could be anyone, drifters, cowboys, maybe just travelers passing through. Or it could be them. Or it could be them. Sam swung back into his saddle. "We need to move faster. Stay close and keep your eyes open." They pushed the horses harder after that. Clara felt the change in Sam's demeanor. The easy patience from last night had disappeared, replaced by a coiled alertness that reminded her of a rattlesnake ready to strike. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning the landscape for threats she couldn't see. "Sam." "Yeah. What happens if we run into them Blackwood's men?" Sam didn't look at her. "We don't. But if we do, then you ride hard the other direction and don't look back." Clara shook her head. "I told you I'm not running anymore. And I told you my rules my way." Sam's voice hardened. "If shooting starts, you run. That's not negotiable." Clara wanted to argue, but something in his tone stopped her. This wasn't stubbornness. This was experience. This was a man who had seen what bullets did to people and didn't want to see it again. "Fine," she said quietly. "But only if you promise to stay alive long enough to catch up with me." Sam almost smiled. Almost. "Deal." They rode until the sun reached its peak and the heat became unbearable. Sam found a cluster of rocks that provided some shade and called for a rest. Clara dismounted gratefully, her legs trembling from hours in the saddle. "Drink," Sam ordered, handing her a canteen. "Small sips." "You keep saying that." "Because you keep forgetting." Clara took the canteen and drank carefully, remembering how the water had tasted last night when she thought she was going to die. She would never take water for granted again. Sam checked on the horses, then settled against a rock nearby. He pulled his hat low over his eyes, but Clara knew he wasn't sleeping. Men like Sam probably never really slept. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You just did." "Something else?" Sam tipped his hat back slightly. "Go ahead." "Last night you said your wife died 5 years ago. Fever." "I did." Clara hesitated. Did you ever think about finding someone else?" "Starting over." The question hung in the hot air between them. For a moment Clara thought Sam wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice low and rough. "Every morning I wake up and reach for her side of the bed. Every night I dream about her face. 5 years and I still can't walk past a garden without thinking about how much she loved growing things." He paused. "Some people move on, Clara. I ain't one of them." Clara nodded slowly. "Thomas was like that for me. The way he laughed. The way he'd sing off key when he thought no one was listening." She smiled sadly. "I used to pretend it annoyed me. Now I'd give anything to hear it again." Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Grief's a funny thing. People expect it to fade like a bruise, but it don't. It just becomes part of you, like a scar you learn to live with. Is that supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to tell you the truth. Feeling better ain't something I can promise." Clara looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since they'd started riding. The lines in his face, the gray in his hair, the weight in his eyes that never seemed to lift. "You're a strange man, Sam Thornton." "Been called worse." "I bet you have." They rested for another 20 minutes, then mounted up again. The afternoon stretched long and hot ahead of them, but Clara found she didn't mind as much. There was something comforting about having someone to ride beside, even if that someone spoke in short sentences and watched the horizon like he expected death to come galloping over it at any moment. It was late afternoon when they spotted the riders. Sam saw them first. His whole body went rigid, and he reached out to grab Clara's reins, pulling both horses to a sudden stop. "Don't move," he breathed. Clara followed his gaze and felt her blood turn to ice. 3 men on horseback, maybe half a mile ahead, their outlines wavering in the heat haze. They were sitting still, facing toward Sam and Clara like they'd been waiting for them. "Is it? I don't know yet." Sam's hand drifted toward his revolver. "Stay calm. Let me do the talking." The riders started moving toward them. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands trembled on the reins. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she forced herself to stay still. She had promised. She had given her word. The riders drew closer. And closer. And then Clara saw something that made her let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The lead rider wore a star pinned to his vest. A lawman's badge. "Easy," Sam murmured. "Deputies? Probably out of Willow Creek." The 3 men pulled up about 20 feet away. The one with the badge was young, maybe 25, with a sunburned face and nervous eyes. The other 2 were older, harder looking, their hands resting casually on their gun belts. "Afternoon," the young deputy said. "You folks heading somewhere particular?" "Willow Creek," Sam replied. "Looking for Reverend Cole." The deputy's eyes narrowed slightly. "That right. And who might you be?" "Name's Sam Thornton. This is Mrs. Mitchell. We're just passing through." One of the older men leaned forward in his saddle. "Thornton. Sam Thornton. The Ranger." Sam met his eyes steadily. "Used to be." The man whistled low. "Well, I'll be damned. Heard stories about you, friend. They say you're the only man who ever put a bullet in Silas Blackwood and lived to tell about it." "Stories tend to grow in the telling." "Maybe so." The man's gaze shifted to Clara, then back to Sam. "You wouldn't happen to be hunting him again, would you, Blackwood?" Sam's expression didn't change. "What makes you ask?" The deputy answered. "Because he's close. Real close. We got word yesterday that the Blackwood riders hit a ranch about 30 miles east of here, killed the owner, burned the place to the ground." Clara felt the blood drain from her face. 30 miles. That was nothing. That was less than 2 days' ride. "Anyone else hurt?" she heard herself ask. The deputy looked at her with something like pity. "Wife and 2 children. They're alive, but—" He shook his head. "It ain't pretty, ma'am." Clara's vision blurred. She thought of another ranch, another fire, another woman left behind to pick up the pieces. The cycle never stopped. It just kept spinning, grinding people up and spitting them out. "We're heading back to Willow Creek now," the deputy continued. "Sheriff's putting together a posse. You're welcome to ride with us, Mr. Thornton. Could use someone who knows what they're doing. Sam glanced at Clara. She saw the question in his eyes. She saw the conflict. Go, she said quietly. If there's a chance to stop him, I'm not leaving you alone out here. I can take care of myself. I don't doubt it, but I made a promise and I intend to keep it. Sam turned back to the deputy. We'll ride with you to Willow Creek. After that we'll see. The deputy nodded. Fair enough. Let's move. Daylight's burning. They fell in with the lawmen and pushed toward town. The pace was faster now, urgent. Clara struggled to keep up, but she gritted her teeth and forced her tired muscles to cooperate. They reached Willow Creek just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. It was a small town, maybe 200 people, with a single main street lined with wooden buildings. A general store, a saloon, a blacksmith, a small church at the far end with a white steeple that caught the fading light. The deputy led them to the sheriff's office where a crowd had already gathered. Men with rifles, women with worried faces, children clinging to their mothers' skirts. Sam dismounted and helped Clara down from her horse. Her legs almost buckled, but she caught herself against the mare's flank. You all right? Sam asked. I will be. He studied her face for a moment, then nodded. Wait here. I need to talk to the sheriff. Sam. Just wait, please. Clara watched him push through the crowd toward the sheriff's office. She felt suddenly very alone, surrounded by strangers in a town she didn't know, with darkness creeping in around the edges. You look like you could use some water. Clara turned. A woman stood beside her, maybe 60 years old, with silver hair and kind eyes. She held out a ladle dripping with cool water. Rosa Delgado, the woman said. I run the boarding house across the street. You came in with Sam Thornton, didn't you? Yes, ma'am. Then you're either very brave or very foolish. Rosa smiled. Maybe both. Drink. Clara accepted the ladle gratefully. Thank you. You have a name, child? Clara Mitchell. Rosa's eyes softened. You're the one from the ranch, aren't you? The one whose husband was killed by Blackwood? Clara nearly dropped the ladle. How do you know that? Word travels fast out here. A woman walking alone through the desert, asking questions about the Blackwood riders. Rosa shook her head. People notice. People talk. Clara didn't know what to say. Rosa patted her arm gently. You don't have to explain yourself to me, child. I've buried 2 husbands myself. I know what grief looks like. I know what it drives people to do. I just want justice. I know. Rosa's voice was sad. We all want justice, but justice is a hard thing to find out here. Sometimes it finds you instead, and it don't always look the way you expect. Before Clara could respond, a commotion broke out near the sheriff's office. Raised voices, the sound of boots on wooden planks. Sam emerged from the crowd, his face grim. He walked straight toward Clara. What happened? She asked. Sheriff's not going after Blackwood. What? Why not? Says he doesn't have enough men. Says it's too dangerous. Says they'll send word to Austin and let the Rangers handle it. Sam's jaw tightened. By the time the Rangers get here, Blackwood will be 3 territories away. Clara felt something hot and furious rise in her chest. So that's it. We just let him go. That's what the sheriff wants. And what do you want? Sam looked at her for a long moment. The fire in his eyes matched her own. I want to finish what I started 3 years ago. Rosa stepped forward. There's someone you should talk to, Sam. Someone who might be able to help. Reverend Cole. He's been expecting you. Rosa pointed toward the church at the end of the street. He's been expecting you for a long time. Sam and Clara exchanged a glance. Then, without another word, they walked toward the church. The door was old and heavy, its hinges creaking as Sam pushed it open. Inside the church was simple wooden pews, a plain altar candles flickering in the evening gloom. And at the front, kneeling before a wooden cross, was a man in black. Reverend Nathaniel Cole. He rose slowly as they approached, turning to face them. He was older than Clara expected, maybe 60, with white hair and deep-set eyes that seemed to hold all the sorrow of the world. "Sam Thornton," he said quietly. "I wondered when you'd finally make it here." "Nathaniel." Sam removed his hat. "It's been a long time." 3 years. The Reverend's gaze shifted to Clara. "And who is this Clara Mitchell? Her husband was killed by Blackwood 6 months ago." Something flickered in the Reverend's eyes. Pain, understanding, and something else, something that looked almost like recognition. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said softly, "I'm sorry for your loss. I truly am." "Thank you, Reverend." Cole looked between them, then sighed heavily. "You're here about Blackwood." "We are," Sam said. "I need to know where he is." "I know where he was 3 days ago." Clara's breath caught. "Where?" The Reverend moved to a small table near the altar and picked up a worn map. He unfolded it carefully and pointed to a spot marked in faded ink. "Red Canyon, about 2 days' ride north of here. There's an old mining camp at the base of the canyon, abandoned years ago when the silver ran out." He looked at Sam. "That's where Blackwood has been hiding. That's where he keeps coming back to." Sam studied the map. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure. I have sources. People who see things and tell me what they see." The Reverend paused. "But Sam, there's something else you need to know." "What?" Cole's face darkened. "Blackwood knows you're coming." The words hit Clara like a physical blow. How could he know?" "Because he's been asking about Sam for months, offering money for information. He knows the man who gave him that scar is still out there, still hunting him." The Reverend looked at Sam with something like fear in his eyes. "He's not running anymore, Sam. He's waiting. He wants this fight." Sam's expression didn't change, but Clara saw his hand drift toward his revolver. "Then I'll give him one." "It's a trap," Clara said. "It has to be a trap." "Probably is." "And you're still going?" Sam turned to face her. His gray eyes were calm, steady, certain. "Clara, I've been chasing this man for 3 years. 3 years of empty trails and cold camps, and waking up every morning wondering if today was the day I'd finally find him." He paused. "Now I know exactly where he is. Trap or no trap, I'm going." "Then I'm going with you." "Clara, don't." She stepped closer to him, close enough to see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes. "Don't tell me it's too dangerous. Don't tell me to wait here where it's safe. I didn't walk 15 miles through the desert to sit in a church while you ride off alone. This is different." How is it different?" "Because if something happens to me, you can still walk away. You can still have a life. But if something happens to you—" Sam stopped. His jaw worked silently. Clara realized something then. Something that made her heart ache in a way it hadn't ached since Thomas died. He wasn't just trying to protect her from Blackwood. He was trying to protect her from becoming like him. Hollow, haunted, unable to let go of the dead. "Sam," she said softly, "I already can't walk away. I couldn't walk away 6 months ago when I buried my husband. I couldn't walk away at the waterhole when you gave me something to believe in. And I can't walk away now." She reached out and touched his arm. "Whatever happens at Red Canyon, we face it together. That's the only way this ends." Sam stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Together," he said quietly. "All right, together." Reverend Cole cleared his throat. "There's one more thing." They both turned to look at him. "Deputy Marshal James Whitfield rode through here 2 days ago heading north. He's been building a case against Blackwood for months, gathering evidence, talking to witnesses." The Reverend paused. "He said if anyone was brave enough or foolish enough to go after Blackwood directly, they should find him first. He's camped at Miller's Crossing, about half a day's ride from Red Canyon." "A marshal?" Clara asked. Why would a marshal help us? Because he wants Blackwood alive, wants him to stand trial, wants the whole territory to see justice done. Cole looked at Sam. He might be willing to work with you if you're willing to work with him. Sam considered this. A trial would be better than a bullet, more lasting. That's what I thought. The Reverend folded up the map and handed it to Sam. Be careful, old friend. Blackwood isn't the same man you shot 3 years ago. He's meaner now, more desperate. And desperate men do desperate things. I know. Sam tucked the map into his shirt. Thank you, Nathaniel, for everything. Don't thank me yet. The Reverend's voice was heavy with worry. Thank me when you come back alive. They left the church as the last light faded from the sky. Stars were beginning to emerge overhead, scattered across the darkness, like promises waiting to be kept. Rosa was waiting for them outside with 2 plates of food and a key to a room at her boarding house. You'll need rest before you ride, she said firmly. No arguments. Clara took the food gratefully. Her stomach had been empty for too long. As they walked toward the boarding house, Sam spoke quietly beside her. We leave at first light. Miller's Crossing is about 5 hours' ride. We find this marshal, see what he knows, and then... He paused. Then we see how this ends. Clara looked at him in the darkness. Sam? Yeah. Thank you. For letting me come. For not treating me like I'm made of glass. Sam was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You walked 15 miles through the desert with no water and didn't give up. A woman like that ain't made of glass. She's made of something a whole lot stronger. Clara felt something warm spread through her chest. Something that felt almost like hope. They reached the boarding house and climbed the stairs to their rooms. At the door to her room, Clara paused and turned back. Sam? He stopped, one hand on his own door. When this is over, she said slowly, what happens then? Sam looked at her for a long moment. The lantern light caught his features, softening the hard lines of his face. I don't know, he admitted. I've been chasing Blackwood for so long I forgot there might be something after. Maybe it's time to remember. Sam held her gaze. Something passed between them, unspoken, unnamed, but real. Maybe it is, he said quietly. Good night, Clara. Good night, Sam. She closed her door and leaned against it, her heart beating faster than it had any right to. Outside, the Texas night stretched endless and full of stars. And somewhere to the north, in a canyon of red stone and old ghosts, Silas Blackwood sat by his fire and waited for the man who had scarred him to finally come. The reckoning was close now. Clara could feel it in her bones. Clara barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Thomas. His face, his smile, the way he looked at her in those final moments before the bullet took him. She woke 3 times in the darkness, heart pounding, reaching for a man who wasn't there anymore. When the first gray light of dawn crept through the window, she was already dressed and waiting. Sam met her downstairs with 2 cups of coffee and a look that said he hadn't slept much either. Ready? He asked. I've been ready for 6 months. They rode out of Willow Creek before the town fully woke. Rosa watched them from the boarding house porch, her face lined with worry. She didn't wave. She just watched until they disappeared over the first ridge. The trail north was rougher than yesterday's path. Sam pushed the pace hard, and Clara matched him stride for stride, ignoring the ache in her muscles and the exhaustion that pulled at her bones. 3 hours into the ride, Sam suddenly reined in his horse. Clara pulled up beside him. What's wrong? Sam didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on something in the distance, his body tense as a coiled spring. Sam, we're being followed. Clara's blood ran cold. How do you know? Dust cloud, about a mile back, moving when we move, stopping when we stop. Sam's hand drifted to his revolver. Been watching it for the last hour. Blackwood's men. Maybe. Maybe just travelers on the same road. He didn't sound like he believed it. Either way, we need to get off this trail. Now. They veered east, pushing through rough terrain that no casual traveler would bother with. The horses struggled over rocky ground and through thorny brush, but Sam didn't slow down. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. She kept glancing over her shoulder, expecting to see riders bearing down on them at any moment. There. Sam pointed toward a cluster of boulders ahead. We'll wait there. See who's following us. They dismounted behind the rocks and tied the horses where they couldn't be seen from the trail. Sam drew his revolver and positioned himself with a clear view of the approach. Clara crouched beside him, her hands shaking. Here. Sam pulled a small pistol from his saddlebag and pressed it into her hands. You know how to use this? Thomas taught me. Then keep it ready, and stay behind me. They waited. Minutes crawled by like hours. The sun beat down mercilessly, and sweat trickled down Clara's spine. She gripped the pistol so tightly, her knuckles turned white. Then she heard it. Hoofbeats. Coming closer. Sam held up his hand. Wait. 2 riders appeared on the trail below. They wore long dusters despite the heat, and red bandanas hung loose around their necks. Clara stopped breathing. Red bandanas. Just like the men who killed Thomas. The riders reined in about 50 yards away, scanning the terrain. One of them pointed toward the ground, following tracks. Following their tracks. Damn, Sam muttered. They're good. What do we do? Stay quiet. Let them pass. But the riders didn't pass. Instead, one of them dismounted and knelt to examine the ground more closely. He said something to his companion, and both men looked directly toward the boulder cluster where Sam and Clara were hiding. They know, Clara whispered. Yeah. Sam's voice was grim. They know. The mounted rider reached for his rifle. Sam moved first. He stood up from behind the rocks and fired in one smooth motion. The shot echoed across the empty landscape like thunder. The rider with the rifle jerked backward and tumbled from his horse. The second man scrambled for cover, drawing his pistol as he ran. Stay down! Sam vaulted over the rocks and sprinted toward a better position, firing twice more as he moved. Clara pressed herself against the boulder, her heart threatening to burst from her chest. Gunfire exploded around her. She heard shouting, the whinnying of panicked horses, then silence. Sam? She raised her head cautiously. Sam? No answer. Clara's stomach dropped. She gripped her pistol and forced herself to move, crawling around the edge of the boulder cluster toward where she had last seen Sam. She found him lying in the dirt, one hand pressed against his left arm. Blood seeped between his fingers. Sam? She ran to him and dropped to her knees. You're hit. Just grazed. Sam's jaw was clenched tight. Where's the other one? I don't. A boot scraped against stone behind her. Clara spun around. The second rider stood 10 feet away, his pistol aimed directly at her head. He was younger than she expected, maybe 30, with cold eyes and a crooked smile. Well now, he said. Ain't this interesting? Clara's hand tightened on her own pistol, but she knew she couldn't raise it fast enough. She was going to die here in the dust, just like Thomas. Drop it, the man ordered. Nice and slow. Clara didn't move. I said drop it. Do what he says, Sam said quietly from behind her. Clara let the pistol fall from her fingers. The man's smile widened. Smart. Now which one of you is Sam Thornton, the man with the bounty on his head? Bounty? Clara's voice shook. Boss put a price on him. $500 to whoever brings him in, dead or alive. The man's eyes moved to Sam. I'm guessing that's you, friend. The one who gave Silas that pretty scar. Sam pushed himself up on one elbow. And I'm guessing you're one of his lapdogs. Careful. The man cocked his pistol. I get paid either way. Clara's mind raced. She had to do something. She couldn't just kneel here and watch Sam die. She couldn't let it end like this, not after everything they'd been through. Her eyes dropped to the ground near her knee. Her pistol lay in the dirt, just inches away. "Silas wants to meet you real bad," the man continued. "Been talking about you for months, the great Sam Thornton, the Texas Ranger who almost killed him." He laughed. "Gonna enjoy watching what he does to you." Clara moved. She grabbed the pistol and fired in one desperate motion, not aiming, just pointing and pulling the trigger. The shot caught the man in the shoulder. He staggered backward, his own gun going off wildly into the air. Before he could recover, Sam was on his feet with his revolver drawn. 2 more shots and the man crumpled to the ground. Silence fell again. Clara sat frozen, the pistol still clutched in her trembling hands. She had never shot anyone before. She had never even considered it possible. "Clara." Sam's voice cut through the shock. "Clara, look at me." She turned to face him. "You saved my life." Clara opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The world felt unreal, like she was watching everything from very far away. Sam knelt beside her and gently took the pistol from her hands. "It's okay. It's over. You did what you had to do. I shot him. You saved me." Sam's eyes held hers steady and calm. "Without you, I'd be dead right now. You understand that?" Clara nodded slowly. The trembling was starting to spread through her whole body. Sam pulled her to her feet. "We need to move. These two might have friends nearby. Can you ride?" "Yes." The word came out stronger than she expected. "Good. Let's go." They mounted up and rode hard for the next 2 hours, putting as much distance between themselves and the ambush site as possible. Sam's wounded arm bled through the makeshift bandage Clara had tied around it, but he refused to stop. Finally, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, they came upon an old mining structure built into the side of a hill. The wooden beams were rotting, and the entrance was half collapsed, but it would provide cover. "In here," Sam said. "We rest until dark, then keep moving." They led the horses inside and found a relatively stable section near the back. Clara immediately turned her attention to Sam's arm. "Let me see it." "It's fine. Let me see it." Sam sighed and let her unwrap the bandage. The wound was worse than he'd let on, a deep graze that had taken a chunk of flesh with it. Clara felt sick looking at it. "I need to clean this." She pulled out her canteen. "Hold still." She washed the wound as gently as she could, while Sam sat stoic and silent. Then she tore a strip from her petticoat and bound it tightly around his arm. "You're getting good at this," Sam said dryly. "I'd rather not have so much practice." Sam almost smiled. Clara finished the bandage and sat back against the mine wall, exhausted. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving her hollow and shaky. "Sam." "Yeah. Why are you doing this?" She looked at him in the dim light filtering through the mine entrance. "Really? Why, you could have stayed in Willow Creek. Could have let the Rangers handle Blackwood. Could have just let it go." Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and rough. "You remember what I told you about the ambush, the one where Blackwood killed my men? 7 Rangers. You were the only survivor." "That's right." Sam stared at his wounded arm. "What I didn't tell you is that it was my plan. My idea to hit the mission that night. I was so sure we had the advantage." His jaw tightened. "I led those men into a trap, Clara. 7 good men with families who loved them. And I'm the one who walked away." Clara felt her chest ache. "That wasn't your fault." "Maybe not, but it was my responsibility." Sam looked up at her. "Every day since then, I've carried their faces with me. Every night I see them in my dreams. The only way I know to make peace with that is to finish what we started. To make sure Blackwood answers for what he's done. And if you die trying, then at least I died doing something that mattered." Clara shook her head slowly. "That's not enough, Sam. That's not a reason to live. That's just a reason to die." Sam met her eyes. "You got a better one?" The question hung between them. Clara thought about Thomas, about the ranch they had built together, about the future they had planned, children, grandchildren growing old side by side. All of it gone now, all of it ash and memory. "I used to think I did," she said finally. "When Thomas was alive, everything made sense. We had plans, dreams, a reason to wake up every morning." She paused. "After he died, I didn't have any of that anymore. I was just existing, going through the motions. And now?" Clara looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something reflected in his gray eyes that she hadn't expected. Understanding, recognition, the particular loneliness of people who had lost everything and were still learning how to breathe. "Now I'm not sure," she admitted. "But I know I'm not ready to give up yet. And I don't think you should be either." Sam held her gaze for a long moment. "You're a remarkable woman, Clara Mitchell." "You keep saying that." "Because it keeps being true." Something shifted in the air between them. Something fragile and new, like the first green shoots, pushing through scorched earth. Clara looked away first. "We should rest. You said we're moving again after dark." "Yeah." Sam's voice was softer now. "We should." But neither of them moved. They sat there in the fading light shoulder to shoulder, listening to the distant sounds of the desert and the steady rhythm of each other's breathing. Sam. Whatever happens tomorrow, at Red Canyon, I want you to know something." "What's that?" Clara turned to face him. "That night at the waterhole when you gave me water and told me the fire didn't belong to you. It belonged to whoever needed it." She paused, gathering courage. "That was the first time since Thomas died that someone treated me like I mattered, like I was worth saving." Sam's expression shifted. Something raw and vulnerable flickered behind his eyes. "You are worth saving, Clara. Don't ever doubt that." "So are you." She reached out and touched his uninjured arm. "So are you." They sat that way for a while, her hand on his arm, his eyes on hers. The walls they had both built around themselves, walls of grief and guilt and survival, felt suddenly thin. "Clara." A sound from outside cut him off. Hoofbeats. Distant but approaching. Sam was on his feet instantly, his revolver drawn. "Stay back," he whispered. Clara pressed herself against the wall, heart racing. The hoofbeats grew louder, closer. Then they stopped just outside the mine entrance. "Thornton," a voice called out. "Sam, Thornton, you in there?" Sam's grip tightened on his revolver. "We know you're there," the voice continued. "Found your tracks about a mile back. We're not here to fight. Name's Whitfield. Deputy Marshal James Whitfield." Clara's breath caught. The marshal. The one Reverend Cole had told them about. Sam moved cautiously toward the entrance. "Show yourself. Hands where I can see them." A moment later, a man stepped into view. He was maybe 35, tall and lean, with a tin star pinned to his vest. His hands were raised above his head, empty. "Easy there," Whitfield said. "I'm alone. My men are camped about 2 miles east. We're not your enemy." "How do I know that?" "Because if I wanted you dead, I wouldn't have announced myself." The marshal lowered his hands slowly. "Reverend Cole sent word that you were coming. Said you might need some help." Sam didn't lower his gun. "What kind of help?" "The kind that puts Silas Blackwood in chains." Whitfield took a step closer. "I've been building a case against him for 2 years. Witnesses, evidence, everything I need to see him hang if I can bring him in alive. And if you can't, then dead works too. But alive is better. Alive means a trial, a reckoning, something the whole territory can see." Sam considered this. Finally, he lowered his revolver. "Come inside. We need to talk." Whitfield entered the mine, his eyes scanning the space until they landed on Clara. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, tipping his hat. "I heard about your husband. I'm sorry." Clara nodded, too surprised to speak. How did he know her name? I make it my business to know who Blackwood hurts, Whitfield explained. Thomas Mitchell, good man, didn't deserve what happened to him. No, Clara said quietly. He didn't. Whitfield turned back to Sam. I've got 12 men camped at Miller's Crossing. Good men, trained, ready to move on Red Canyon at dawn. He paused. But I could use someone who knows Blackwood, someone who's faced him before. And if it's a trap, Sam asked, Blackwood knows I'm coming. Then it's a trap we walk into with our eyes open. Whitfield's jaw set. I'm tired of chasing shadows, Thornton. I'm tired of writing letters to widows and orphans. One way or another, this ends tomorrow. Sam glanced at Clara. She met his eyes and nodded. All right, Sam said. We're in. Whitfield allowed himself a small smile. Good. Get some rest. We ride at first light. He turned to leave, then paused at the entrance. One more thing. Blackwood's got maybe 15 men with him at Red Canyon. We'll be outnumbered. He looked back at Sam. I hope you're as good as the stories say. Sam checked his revolver. Guess we'll find out. Whitfield nodded once and disappeared into the darkness. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. This is it, she said. Tomorrow. Yeah. Sam sat down heavily beside her. Tomorrow. Clara reached out and took his hand. He didn't pull away. They sat together in the darkness, two broken people on the edge of something that would either heal them or destroy them completely. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly overhead, and in a canyon of red stone, Silas Blackwood sharpened his knife and smiled. They reached Miller's Crossing, just as the first light touched the horizon. Whitfield's camp was larger than Clara expected. 12 men, just as he'd promised, along with horses, supplies, and enough rifles to start a small war. The men looked up as Sam and Clara rode in, their faces hard and weathered from years on the frontier. Thornton, a grizzled man with a gray beard, stepped forward. Deputy Whitfield told us you were coming. Name's Hank Cooper. I was a ranger myself once upon a time. Sam dismounted and shook his hand. Good to meet you, Cooper. You too. Cooper's eyes shifted to Clara. Ma'am? Mrs. Mitchell, Sam said. Her husband was killed by Blackwood. Something flickered in Cooper's expression. Respect, maybe, or understanding. Then you've got more reason than most to be here, he said quietly. Welcome to the fight. Whitfield emerged from a tent and walked toward them. You made good time. Any trouble on the road? 2 of Blackwood's men found us yesterday, Sam said. They won't be finding anyone else. Whitfield nodded grimly. Then he knows we're close. We need to move faster than planned. What's the situation at Red Canyon? Scout came back an hour ago. Whitfield pulled out a rough map and spread it on a nearby rock. Blackwood's got 15 men, maybe more. They're holed up in the old mining camp at the canyon floor. Only 2 ways in the main trail from the south and a narrow path along the eastern ridge. Sam studied the map. He'll have the main trail covered. Probably men in the rocks above ready to pick off anyone who tries to ride through. That's what I figured. Whitfield traced a line along the eastern ridge. But this path here, it's steep, dangerous, barely wide enough for a single horse. He might not expect anyone to come that way. Might not, Sam agreed. Or he might have it covered too. Only one way to find out. Clara stepped closer to the map. What about a distraction? Both men turned to look at her. If someone draws their attention to the main trail, she continued, the men on the ridge might be able to get into position without being seen. Whitfield shook his head. Too dangerous. Whoever rides that main trail would be walking straight into a killing ground. Not if they weren't trying to get through. Clara's heart was pounding, but she kept her voice steady. Just enough to make Blackwood think the attack is coming from the south. Draw his men out. Give you time to flank them. Sam's expression hardened. No. Sam, I said no. His voice left no room for argument. You're not riding into that canyon alone. I wouldn't be alone. I'd have some of the men with me. It doesn't matter. The answer is no. Clara turned to face him fully. This isn't your decision to make. The hell it isn't. Sam. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. I didn't come all this way to hide behind rocks while other people fight my battle. Thomas deserves better than that. I deserve better than that. You think getting yourself killed honors Thomas? You think that's what he would have wanted? What Thomas would have wanted is for me to live. Really live. Not just survive. Clara's eyes burned with unshed tears. And I can't do that until this is over. Until I've faced the man who took him from me. Sam stared at her. His jaw worked silently. She's got a point, Whitfield said quietly. A small group approaching from the south would draw their fire. Give us maybe 10-15 minutes to get into position on the ridge. Could make the difference between winning and getting slaughtered. You're asking me to let her ride into a death trap. I'm asking you to trust her. Whitfield met Sam's eyes. And to trust me. I won't let anything happen to her. Sam was silent for a long moment. Clara could see the war raging behind his eyes, the desire to protect her battling against the recognition that she had every right to make this choice herself. Finally he spoke. You stay back. You don't engage. The moment shooting starts, you turn around and ride like hell. Understood? Clara nodded. Understood. I mean it, Clara. I'm not losing anyone else to Silas Blackwood. The raw emotion in his voice made her throat tighten. You won't, she said softly. I promise. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Whitfield divided his men into 2 groups 8 to take the ridge path with Sam 4 to approach from the south with Clara. Cooper would lead the southern group, his experience making him the obvious choice. As the sun climbed higher, the tension in the camp grew thicker. Men checked their weapons, said quiet prayers, wrote letters to loved ones they might never see again. Clara found herself standing apart from the others, staring north toward the canyon she couldn't yet see. Her hand rested on the pistol Sam had given her, the same pistol she had used to save his life. You scared? She turned. Sam stood behind her, his wounded arm freshly bandaged, his gray eyes unreadable. Terrified, she admitted. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. He moved to stand beside her. I've been thinking about what you said. About Thomas. About honoring his memory. And I think you're right. I think he'd be proud of you right now. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. You didn't know him. No. But I know you. And any man who earned your love must have been someone worth remembering. Clara turned to face him. Sam, there's something I need to say. In case... Don't. Please, just let me... Don't talk like we're not coming back. Sam's voice was firm but gentle. We're coming back, both of us. And when we do, we're going to have plenty of time for talking. Clara swallowed hard. Promise. Promise. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was warm and strong, and Clara held on to it like a lifeline. When this is over, Sam said quietly, I want to show you something. A place I know south of Austin. Little valley with a creek running through it. Quiet. Peaceful. Nothing but sky and grass and the sound of water. Sounds beautiful. It is. He paused. Sarah and I used to talk about building a house there someday. Never got the chance. Clara understood what he was saying, what he was offering. I'd like that, she whispered. I'd like that very much. Sam squeezed her hand once, then let go. Then we'd better make sure we both survive today. Riders! Someone shouted from the edge of camp. Coming in fast. Sam's hand flew to his revolver. Clara felt her heart stop. A single horse burst over the ridge, its rider bent low over the neck. As it drew closer, Clara recognized him, the young deputy from Willow Creek. The horse skidded to a stop in a cloud of dust. The deputy nearly fell from the saddle. Marshal Whitfield, he gasped. Message from town, urgent. Whitfield strode forward. What is it? Blackwood. The deputy struggled to catch his breath. He's not waiting for you. He's riding out. Today. Right now. Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. What do you mean, riding out? Sam demanded. Got word from a rancher who barely escaped with his life. Blackwood broke camp before dawn. He's moving south toward the settlements. Says he's done hiding. Whitfield's face went pale. How many men? All of them. 15, maybe 20. Armed to the teeth. The deputy looked like he might be sick. Marshal, he's heading straight for Willow Creek. Clara's blood turned to ice. Rosa, the Reverend. All those families who had watched her and Sam ride out just yesterday. If Blackwood reached the town before they could stop him, we have to go. Sam was already moving toward his horse. Now. Wait. Whitfield grabbed his arm. If we ride out half-cocked, we'll run straight into them. Blackwood wants that. He wants chaos. Then what do you suggest? Whitfield's mind was working fast. Clara could see it in his eyes. If Blackwood left Red Canyon this morning, he's got maybe a 4-hour head start. But he'll be moving slow that many men, that many horses, they can't push too hard in this heat. So we can catch them. Maybe. If we cut across country instead of taking the main trail. Whitfield pointed east. There's a pass through the hills about 10 miles from here. Comes out at Widow's Creek, right where the trail to Willow Creek narrows between two ridges. Sam understood immediately. A choke point. Exactly. If we can get there first, we can set up an ambush, catch Blackwood between the ridges before he ever reaches town. And if we can't get there first? Whitfield's jaw tightened. Then a lot of innocent people are going to die. They mounted up within minutes, all 15 of them riding hard across the unforgiving terrain, pushing the horses to their limits. Clara rode beside Sam, her heart pounding with every hoofbeat. This wasn't the plan. None of this was the plan. But she had learned something in the past week. Life on the frontier rarely went according to plan. You adapted. You survived. Or you died. 2 hours into the ride, Cooper pulled up beside her. You doing all right, Mrs. Mitchell? I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look like you're about to fall off that horse. Clara gritted her teeth. I said I'm fine. Cooper studied her for a moment, then nodded. Your husband, Thomas. I knew him. Clara nearly jerked the reins in surprise. What? Years ago, before he settled down. We rode together for a cattle company out of San Antonio. Cooper's weathered face softened slightly. Good man. Honest. Never cheated anyone. Never backed down from what was right. Clara felt tears threatening again. That sounds like Thomas. He talked about wanting a ranch someday, a wife, kids. Cooper paused. Said he wanted to build something that would last. He did build it. Clara's voice cracked. Blackwood just burned it down. Then we make sure Blackwood pays for that. Cooper's eyes hardened. For Thomas. For all of them. They rode on. The sun was past its peak when they finally reached the pass. Widow's Creek stretched out below them, a narrow strip of water winding between two steep ridges. The trail to Willow Creek ran right through the middle, and there was no sign of Blackwood's men. Not yet. We beat them. Whitfield allowed himself a grim smile. Position the men along both ridges. Nobody fires until I give the signal. We want them in the middle before we spring the trap. The men moved quickly, spreading out along the high ground with their rifles ready. Sam positioned himself near the northern end of the ambush, where he would have a clear view of anyone coming down the trail. Clara found a spot nearby, her pistol gripped tight in her hands. Clara. Sam appeared beside her. I want you to stay back, way back, no matter what happens. Sam. This isn't negotiable. You've already proven yourself 10 times over. Now I need you to prove one more thing. What's that? That you trust me enough to let me do this. Clara looked into his eyes. She saw the fear there, not for himself, but for her. This man who had lost so much already. This man who had somehow, against all odds, found his way into her heart. I trust you, she said. Then stay back. Please. She nodded. I will. Sam touched her face just for a moment. His calloused fingers were gentle against her cheek. When this is over, he said, I have something important to tell you. Before Clara could respond, a shout rang out from the ridge. Riders coming in from the north. Sam's hand dropped. His expression hardened. Get to cover, he said. Now. Clara scrambled back to a position behind a cluster of rocks. From here she could see the trail below winding through the narrow passage between the ridges. And then she saw them. Blackwood's men rode in a loose column, their horses kicking up dust as they moved. At the front, on a black stallion, rode a figure Clara would never forget. Tall, thin, hair slicked back under a black hat. And that scar, that terrible scar, running from his eye to his jaw like a lightning bolt frozen in flesh. Silas Blackwood. Clara's hands shook so badly she could barely hold her pistol. Every memory of that terrible night came flooding back. The gunshots, the fire. Thomas falling to his knees in the dirt. This was the man. The man who had destroyed her life. The man who had haunted her nightmares for 6 months. And now, finally, he was within her reach. The column moved deeper into the pass. 20 riders, maybe more. Clara counted them as they filed between the ridges, completely unaware of the trap closing around them. 10, 15, 20. Whitfield's voice rang out. Now! The ridges exploded with gunfire. Blackwood's men scattered screaming, falling from their horses. The narrow passage became a chaos of smoke and blood and panicked animals. Clara pressed herself against the rock, watching the battle unfold. She saw Sam rise from cover, firing steadily, each shot finding its mark. She saw Cooper and the others pouring lead down from the ridges, and she saw Blackwood. He had spurred his horse forward at the first shot, breaking through the ambush with 3 of his men close behind. While his gang died around him, he was riding hard toward the southern end of the pass, toward escape, toward Willow Creek. Sam! Clara screamed. He's getting away! Sam spun toward the fleeing riders, but he was too far. By the time he could get to his horse, Blackwood would be gone. Clara didn't think. She ran. She ran to her horse, swung into the saddle, and kicked the mare into a gallop. Behind her, she heard Sam shouting her name, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Blackwood had taken everything from her. Her husband, her home, her future. She would not let him take anyone else. The mare flew across the rocky ground, closing the distance between Clara and the fleeing outlaws. Wind whipped tears from her eyes. Her heart thundered in her ears. One of Blackwood's men turned in his saddle and raised a rifle. Clara ducked low over the mare's neck as the shot whizzed past her head. She raised her pistol and fired back once, twice, and saw the man jerk and fall. 2 riders left, Blackwood and 1 other. The second man wheeled his horse around to face her. Clara saw his hand reaching for his gun. She fired first. He crumpled. Now it was just her and Blackwood. The outlaw had stopped running. He sat on his black stallion at the edge of the pass, watching her approach. And he was smiling. Well now, he called out, ain't you a surprise? Clara pulled her horse to a stop 30 feet away. Her pistol was empty. She had fired every round. But Blackwood didn't know that. Silas Blackwood, she said. Her voice came out stronger than she expected. That's me. He tilted his head, studying her with those cold black eyes. Have we met? 6 months ago. You rode onto my ranch with your men. You killed my husband. Something flickered in Blackwood's expression. Not guilt, not remorse, just recognition. The Mitchell place, he said. I remember. Your husband tried to be a hero. His smile widened. Didn't work out so well for him. Clara's hand tightened on the empty pistol. You going to shoot me? Blackwood asked. Go ahead, pull the trigger. Get off your horse. Or what? Hoofbeats thundered behind her. Clara didn't turn, but she saw Blackwood's smile falter. Sam's voice rang out. "It's over, Blackwood. You're surrounded." More riders appeared on the ridge above Whitfield's men, their rifles trained on the outlaw below. Blackwood looked around slowly, calculating his options. For a long moment, Clara thought he might try to run again, or fight. Then, slowly, he raised his hands. "Well," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Seems you win this round, Thornton." Sam rode up beside Clara, his revolver aimed at Blackwood's chest. "Get off the horse, slowly." Blackwood dismounted, his eyes never leaving Sam's face. "That scar I gave you healed up nice. Mine didn't. Should have aimed better. Next time." "There won't be a next time." Sam gestured to the men on the ridge. "Take him." Two of Whitfield's deputies scrambled down and seized Blackwood's arms. The outlaw didn't resist, but his eyes stayed locked on Sam. "You think this is over," he said softly. "You think putting me in chains changes anything? It's a start." Blackwood laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You've been chasing me for 3 years, Thornton. 3 years of your life wasted on me. And for what? So I can hang." He shook his head. "I'm already dead. Been dead since the war ended. You can't kill what's already gone." Sam's expression didn't change. "Maybe not, but I can make sure you never hurt anyone again." The deputies dragged Blackwood away. Clara sat frozen on her horse, her empty pistol still clutched in her hand. The adrenaline was fading now, leaving her hollow and shaking. Sam reached over and gently took the gun from her fingers. "It's over," he said quietly. "Clara, it's over." She turned to look at him. Dust covered his face. Blood seeped through the bandage on his arm. But his gray eyes, were soft and warm and full of something she hadn't seen before. "I thought I lost you," he said. "When you rode after him, I had to." "I know." He moved his horse closer to hers. "I know you did." Clara felt the tears come then. All the fear, all the grief, all the rage she had carried for 6 months. It poured out of her in great shuddering sobs. Sam reached out and pulled her from her horse onto his. She collapsed against his chest, and he held her tight as she cried. "It's over," he murmured against her hair. "It's finally over." And for the first time since Thomas died, Clara believed it. They brought Silas Blackwood into Willow Creek in chains. The whole town turned out to watch. Men, women, children. They lined the main street in silence as the procession moved toward the jailhouse. Some faces showed relief. Others showed fear. A few showed the kind of raw hatred that Clara understood all too well. Rosa was waiting on the boarding house porch. When she saw Clara riding beside Sam alive and whole, tears spilled down her weathered cheeks. "Thank God," she whispered. "Thank God." Clara dismounted and found herself pulled into Rosa's fierce embrace. "I told you we'd come back." "You told me nothing, child. You just rode off into the desert like a fool." Rosa pulled back and held Clara's face in her hands. A brave fool, but a fool nonetheless. Clara almost laughed. "I learned from the best." Reverend Cole appeared beside them, his face grave, but his eyes bright with something like hope. "Is it true Blackwood is captured?" "It's true." Sam dismounted and joined them. "Whitfield's men are locking him up now. The trial will be held here in Willow Creek. The whole territory will see justice done." The Reverend closed his eyes and murmured a prayer. When he opened them again, they were wet. 3 years, he said quietly. 3 years I've been waiting for this day." "So have I." Sam's voice was rough with emotion. "So have a lot of people." They walked together toward the jailhouse where Whitfield was already coordinating with the local sheriff. Blackwood sat in a cell at the back, his wrists still shackled, his black eyes watching everything with cold amusement. "Enjoy the show while it lasts," he called out as they entered. "This little town can't hold me forever." Whitfield didn't even look at him. "The circuit judge arrives in 3 days. Until then, you'll have round-the-clock guards and no visitors." He turned to Sam. I'd recommend you and Mrs. Mitchell get some rest. You've earned it." Sam nodded, but his eyes lingered on Blackwood's cell. 3 years of hunting. 3 years of nightmares and cold trails and empty leads. And now finally the man responsible for so much pain was behind bars. It didn't feel real. Clara touched his arm. "Sam, let's go." He let her lead him out of the jailhouse and back into the afternoon sunlight. The crowd had dispersed, returning to their homes and their lives. But Clara noticed something different in the way they moved. Lighter. Freer. Hope. That's what it was. Hope. "You should see a doctor about that arm," Clara said as they walked toward Rosa's boarding house. "It's fine." "It's not fine. It's been bleeding on and off for 2 days. Clara. Sam Thornton. I did not ride through hell and back just to watch you die of infection." She stopped and faced him, hands on her hips. "You're seeing a doctor. That's not negotiable." Something flickered in Sam's eyes. Amusement, maybe, or affection. "You know," he said slowly, "you're even more stubborn than my wife was." Clara felt her cheeks flush. "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." Sam's lips twitched. "But yes, it's a compliment." They found the town doctor, a tired-looking man named Harrison, who cleaned and properly bandaged Sam's wound while muttering about foolish cowboys and their reckless ways. Clara sat beside Sam throughout, holding his hand when the doctor poured whiskey over the injury to prevent infection. "You'll live," Harrison announced finally, "but keep that arm still for at least a week. No riding, no shooting, no heroics." "I'll make sure of it," Clara said. Sam raised an eyebrow. "You will?" "Someone has to." That night, Rosa insisted they both stay at the boarding house. She gave them rooms across the hall from each other and refused to accept any payment. "You saved this town," she said firmly. "The least I can do is give you a bed and a hot meal." Dinner was simple stew and fresh bread, but it tasted like the finest meal Clara had ever eaten. She sat across from Sam at Rosa's kitchen table, exhausted and sore, and more at peace than she had been in months. "Clara." Sam's voice was quiet. "Can we talk?" Her heart skipped. "Of course." They moved to the front porch, where the evening breeze carried the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. Sam leaned against the railing, his injured arm cradled against his chest. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, "about what happens now. And I don't know." He turned to face her. "For 3 years, hunting Blackwood was all I had. It was the only thing that got me out of bed in the morning. The only thing that made me feel like my life still meant something." Clara waited. "But now it's over. Blackwood's in jail. The hunt is finished." Sam's voice dropped. "And I don't know who I am without it." Clara stepped closer to him. "Maybe you don't have to know yet. Maybe you just have to be willing to find out." "Is that what you're doing? Finding out who you are without Thomas?" The question hit her harder than she expected. She had spent so long defining herself by her grief, by her mission for justice, that she hadn't stopped to consider what came after. "I don't know," she admitted. "I thought when Blackwood was captured everything would suddenly make sense, that I'd finally feel whole again." "And do you—" Clara thought about it, really thought. "No," she said finally. "I don't feel whole. I don't think I ever will. Thomas was part of me, and that part is gone forever." She paused. "But I feel something else, something I haven't felt in a long time." "What?" "Possibility." Clara looked up at him. "Like, maybe there's still a future out there. Like maybe I don't have to spend the rest of my life looking backward." Sam was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out and took her hand. "That valley I told you about," he said quietly. "South of Austin, with the creek and the open sky. I remember. I want to take you there, when this is over. When Blackwood's trial is finished." His gray eyes held hers. "I want to show you what the future could look like." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. "Sam, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. "I know it's too soon. I know you're still grieving. I just—" He stopped, struggling for words. "I don't want to lose you, Clara. Not now. Not after everything." Clara squeezed his hand. "You're not going to lose me." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." She stepped closer, close enough to see the faint lines around his eyes, the gray in his hair, the hope and fear warring in his expression. "Because I'm choosing to stay. Not because I have to. Not because I have nowhere else to go. Because I want to." Sam's breath caught. "Clara, you saved my life at that water hole. You gave me water when I was dying. You gave me hope when I had none." Her voice trembled. "Let me do the same for you." For a moment, neither of them moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Sam leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, the kiss of two people who had forgotten how to trust, how to hope, how to love. But it was real, and it was enough. When they finally pulled apart, Clara was crying, but for the first time in 6 months, they were tears of joy. "Is this okay?" Sam whispered. "I don't want to." Clara silenced him with another kiss. "It's okay," she said against his lips. "It's more than okay." They stood together on the porch as the stars came out, holding each other like they were afraid to let go. And maybe they were. Maybe after everything they had lost, the idea of finding something new was as terrifying as it was wonderful. But they had faced outlaws and ambushes and death itself. They could face this too. Together. The trial of Silas Blackwood began 3 days later. Judge Marcus Wheeler arrived from Austin with a reputation for fairness and a complete lack of tolerance for outlaws. The courtroom hastily assembled in the town's largest building. The general store was packed with spectators from across the territory. Clara sat in the front row beside Sam. She watched as witness after witness took the stand, telling stories of ranches, burned families, destroyed lives, stolen. Each testimony was another piece of the puzzle, another weight on the scale of justice. When it was her turn, Clara walked to the front of the room on legs that trembled but didn't falter. "State your name for the record," Judge Wheeler said. "Clara Jane Mitchell." "And your relationship to the defendant." Clara looked at Blackwood. He sat in chains, his black eyes fixed on her with cold contempt. "He murdered my husband," she said clearly. "Thomas Mitchell. 6 months ago at our ranch outside Bitter Creek." The room was silent. "Tell us what happened," the judge said gently. Clara told them. Every detail. The riders appearing at dawn. Thomas stepping outside to meet them. The gunshot that ended his life. The fire that consumed everything they had built together. By the time she finished, there were tears on her cheeks. But her voice never wavered. "Mrs. Mitchell," Judge Wheeler said, "is the man who killed your husband in this room." Clara raised her hand and pointed at Blackwood. "He's right there." Blackwood smiled. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. "That woman is lying," he said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "I never touched her husband, never even heard of the Mitchell Ranch until today." "You have 15 witnesses who say otherwise." Whitfield responded from his position near the judge. "Witnesses can be bought. Stories can be invented." Blackwood's eyes swept the crowd. This whole trial is a circus, a show put on by a desperate lawman and a grieving widow who needs someone to blame. Sam rose from his seat. "That's enough." Blackwood turned to him, his smile widening. "Ah, Sam Thornton, the famous Texas Ranger, the man who gave me this." He gestured to the scar on his face. "Tell me, Thornton, how does it feel spending 3 years of your life chasing a ghost, only to end up in this dusty little courtroom with nothing to show for it?" "I've got plenty to show for it," Sam said quietly. "You're in chains, your gang is dead or scattered, and in a few hours, You're going to hang. Something flickered in Blackwood's eyes. Fear, maybe. Or just rage. You think killing me ends anything? He laughed a harsh, bitter sound. There are 100 men like me out there, 1,000. You can't hang us all. Maybe not. Sam met his gaze steadily. But I can hang you. The judge called for order. The trial continued. By late afternoon, it was over. Judge Wheeler retired to consider his verdict, though everyone in the room already knew what it would be. Guilty. The word rang out across the courtroom like a gunshot. Blackwood didn't react. He simply sat there staring straight ahead as the judge pronounced his sentence. Silas Blackwood, you have been found guilty of murder, robbery, arson, and countless other crimes against the people of this territory. The sentence is death by hanging. Execution to be carried out at dawn tomorrow. The room erupted. People cheered, cried, embraced each other. After years of terror, the nightmare was finally ending. Clara sat frozen in her seat, unable to move. Sam reached over and took her hand. It's over, he said quietly. Really over. Clara nodded slowly, but something in her chest felt hollow. This was what she had wanted. This was what she had traveled hundreds of miles, nearly died, risked everything to achieve. Justice for Thomas. So why did she feel so empty? Clara. Sam's voice was concerned. What's wrong? I thought I would feel different, she whispered. I thought when Blackwood was sentenced, something inside me would heal. But I just feel... She trailed off, unable to find the words. Numb. Yes. Sam squeezed her hand. That's normal. Trust me. When I shot Blackwood 3 years ago, when I thought he was dead, I felt the same way. Like I should be celebrating, but all I could do was stare at the ceiling and wonder what came next. What did you do? I kept moving, kept putting one foot in front of the other. He paused. And eventually I found something worth living for again. Clara looked at him. What was that? Sam's gray eyes were soft. You. The hanging took place at dawn the next morning. Clara didn't attend. Neither did Sam. They had both seen enough death. Instead, they saddled their horses and rode out of Willow Creek as the first light touched the horizon. They didn't speak for the first hour. They just rode side by side, letting the silence settle around them like a blanket. Finally, Sam pulled his horse to a stop. I know this place, Clara said, looking around. You should. Sam dismounted. This is where we met. Clara's breath caught. The water hole. The cluster of rocks where Sam had been camped that night. The spot where she had collapsed, begging for water, certain she was going to die. It felt like a lifetime ago. I wanted to come back here, Sam said quietly. Before we move on. Before we start whatever comes next. He helped her down from her horse. I wanted to remember where it all began. Clara walked to the edge of the waterhole and knelt beside it. The water was clear and cool, trickling over rocks worn smooth by years of patient flow. That night, she said softly, when I asked if I could share your fire, I thought you were going to turn me away. Never crossed my mind. Why not? You didn't know me. I could have been anyone. Sam knelt beside her. Because I saw something in your eyes. Something I recognized. What? Someone who had lost everything but refused to give up. He reached out and touched her cheek. Someone worth saving. Clara felt tears slip down her face. I wasn't trying to be saved. I know. You were trying to survive. There's a difference. Sam's voice dropped. But sometimes surviving isn't enough. Sometimes you need someone to remind you that living is still worth the effort. You did that for me. And you did it for me. Sam took her hand. Clara. I've spent 3 years as a ghost, walking through the world without really being part of it, chasing Blackwood because I didn't know what else to do with myself. And now I want to stop chasing. His gray eyes held hers. I want to build something instead. Something real. Something lasting. Clara's heart was pounding. What are you saying? Sam reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It was a ring, simple silver, worn with age. This was Sarah's, he said quietly. She gave it back to me before she died. Told me to find someone worthy of wearing it someday. Clara stared at the ring, unable to speak. I'm not asking you to replace her, Sam continued. I'm not asking you to forget Thomas. I'm just asking if maybe we could build something new together, something that honors what we've lost instead of being destroyed by it. Tears were streaming down Clara's face now. Sam, I know it's too soon. I know we've only known each other for a week, but I've learned something out here on the frontier. He paused. Life is short, and love is rare. When you find someone worth holding on to, you hold on. You don't let go. Clara looked at the ring, looked at Sam, looked at the waterhole where her life had changed forever. Yes, she whispered. Sam's face transformed. Yes, yes. Clara laughed through her tears. Yes, I'll build something with you. Yes, I'll wear Sarah's ring. Yes, to all of it. Sam slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her there beside the waterhole where a dying woman had once asked a stranger for help and received so much more than she ever dreamed possible. 3 months later, they stood together on a piece of land south of Austin. A little valley with a creek running through it. Open sky and tall grass, and the sound of water dancing over stones. Sam had started building the cabin the week before. It wasn't much yet, just a frame and a foundation, but Clara could already see what it would become. A home. Their home. What do you think? Sam asked, his arm around her shoulders. Clara leaned into him. I think Thomas would have loved it. Sarah too. They stood there in comfortable silence, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. Sam, thank you. He looked down at her. For what? For that night at the waterhole, for sharing your fire, for giving me a reason to keep going. She turned to face him fully. For showing me that endings don't have to be the end. They can be beginnings too. Sam smiled a real smile, one that reached his gray eyes and softened all the hard lines of his face. You showed me the same thing, he said. The night you collapsed in the dirt and asked for water, I was just as lost as you were, just as broken. I just didn't know it yet. And now I'm found. He kissed her forehead. We both are. Clara looked out at their valley, their creek, their future spreading out before them like an unwritten story. Behind them lay grief and loss and a trail of tears that stretched across the frontier. But ahead lay possibility, hope, a second chance that neither of them had dared to believe in. She thought about Thomas, buried beneath that cottonwood tree so many miles away. She thought about Sarah resting in the earth outside Austin. 2 good people taken too soon, but never forgotten. And she understood finally what it meant to honor them. Not by living in the past, not by dying alongside their memory, but by choosing to live, fully, bravely, with an open heart. That was the true legacy of love. Not the grief it left behind, but the courage it inspired to love again. Clara turned to Sam, her husband, her partner, her second chance. Let's go home, she said. Sam took her hand, and together they walked toward the future. Because sometimes the smallest act of kindness, a stranger sharing water beside a dying fire, can change the entire direction of a life. And sometimes 2 broken people finding each other in the wilderness is exactly how the best stories begin. Thank you for listening. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. And don't forget to tell me in the comments, where are you watching from today? I love seeing how far these tales travel across the world. Until next time, may you always find kindness on your road, and someone willing to share their fire when the night grows cold.